Today, we're looking at a blue ink by Atramentis Robert Louis Stevenson's South Sea Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. Down below there's timestamps so that if there's only certain things you're interested, you can skip around to it. But if you've got the time, I would appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram. And if you like fountain pen ink reviews and are new here, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Jinhao 51A with a fine nib. I wrote with it for a day. I then used it to take the notes for this video. In order to have some standardization while looking at writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper, although there are additional writing samples that occur much later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is just a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots that are a bit darker, and that's about it. Not really shading, but there are spots that are darker. 13 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, and about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 21 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, although we get spots of darkness in the extra fine. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 17 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 28 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get it in the writing. Let go, paper. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading, spots that are a little bit darker, but that's about it. Like in the H is a bit darker than what's around it, or the K in quick, or the B in, there's spots. 14 seconds to dry. Now, medium is darker than the extra fine, just a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. It has spots of shading, as in there are occasional spots that are a little lighter than everything else, like the N in brown, the O in over, the T in the, but that's about it. 22 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show some color variation left to right, but it's much more here than what we got in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this blue immediately starts pushing its way up and almost fleeing from the water, although it is leaving some behind. And there is a very, very dark line across the top, but I believe that to not be a different blue, but just the gathering of this blue. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And what we see is there is a fairly uniform amount of the blue as we're pushing its way up. After 10 minutes, it's bonding with the paper almost at the rate that it's moving away from the water. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation if I needed to go back and highlight because of the amount of blowout that is occurring with that lowercase h. Water is lifting all of the darkest tones, but not the lighter tones of this blue. Pen Flush is doing everything that water did. It's a little bit more, but now this is only sitting on there for 30 seconds. We are beginning to see the white of the paper showing through. I did need to use Pen Flush to get this out of my pen. Water wasn't getting it all. 1/3 bleach solution is completely removing it from the paper. It's also discoloring the ink around the outside that it touched. But you shouldn't need a 1/3 bleach solution to get this out of your pen. I test viscosity or flow with a thing called a tilt test. I'll link it somewhere down below or up in the cards. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. The Atramentis South Seas Blue has a viscosity of 2.21, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. The Atramentis South Seas Blue has a dry time of 19 seconds, making it still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like the Atramentis South Seas Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. So I went for a nice gray, and I chose the Atramentis Fog Grey. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, Life, and Apica paper. Here we're looking at the yellow Rhodia paper. Not so much looking at performance difference, but more looking at a tone change that you might go through with this blue ink in a professional environment if you are writing on yellow paper. So there is some change in the tone of the blue. However, the more important part of what I see here is that it is still blue. So if the color of your ink matters and you write on yellow paper for work, it's good to know that you still have a blue here. Here we have Life paper with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 17 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get it in the writing. Last up is Apica. The 1.1, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer spots of shading throughout. Not too bad. Look at what's going on with the word lazy. Look at what's going on with the word brown or the word over. It's very nice shading in the extra fine, 8 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 13 seconds to dry. Now, both scrubbies show no color variation, although we got plenty in the extra fine, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of the Atramentis Robert Louis Stevenson's South Seas Blue? At first glance, this is a nice blue with some decent shading, and at second and third glance, it's still a nice blue with nice shading. Nice job. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I would prefer a dry, medium, or broad to really be able to bring out the shading that this ink has, where a wet pen drowns out the shading but does put down a nice vivid blue. I'm going to remind you that I'm here every day with a new ink review. Thanks for watching.